10 points or 10 topics. Of course, there are links between these topics, mainly kind of an introduction for a debate. I will speak about these last 10 years in Turkey, which a negative mutation took place. The first point is what's happened with AKP, the Justice and Development Party, governmental party in Turkey. 2002 is the first election victory of the AKP. So AKP win the general election. 5 years later, in 2007, that was the second victory of the AKP, which is rare in the Turkish politics, a party who is winning twice a general election, and each time the score was going higher. So AKP in 2007 became a government. Just last year, that was 2011, the third victory with almost 50% of votes. We saw something new, which is the AKP state. I know that most of you knows what's going, in general, what's going on in Turkey, but I think that we do have a peculiar problem with the government and the state. These are two completely, most of the time, completely different bodies. In these 10 years, AKP became first government and then became the state. Because before, there was what we call deep state or ex-state, which was mainly a military controlled mechanism. Now AKP, very probably since the creation of the Republic in 23, for the first time there is just one body which has to be called at the same time the government and the state. Image number 2, from marginal to, from march to center, from shanty town to four-wheel drive. Really, this image shows so many things about this mutation, about this transformation in the, not only Turkish political life, but also social life. These people, I'm speaking about AKP, were before 2002, well, of course, most of them were not living in shanty towns, but were excluded from the political scene, even from the social scene, as Islamic, as they have been accused of reaction, religious reaction, a representative of the Middle Ages, things like that. But only in 10 years, moving from the periphery to the center, so from shantytown to four-wheel drive. Very capitalistic, always keeping the Islamic scarf, speaking about the woman, of course. It's a big change, because normally, as you know, there is no Mercedes in shantytown. This is mainly, they also became urban people, because looking from the structure, sociological structure of Turkey, the votes of AKP on the political map are coming mainly from the rural area, are coming mainly from central Anatolia, not from the coastal area, the Black Sea, Marmara, Aegean area and Mediterranean are areas where AKP is not very strong. Image number 3. These people, I'm speaking always about AKP, were the black sheep of the ancien regime, and now they became the new king of the new regime. This is kind of an alchemy, the black sheep became a king. This is also a mutation which is really very interesting, because when I'm talking about black sheep, these were really people who were not at all appreciated by the ancien regime or by the classical Turkish bureaucracy, military and the civilian one. But from this position, in only 10 years, they were able to become really the new kings, or I think the better term should be the new sultans, because they are Muslim and they are coming from Ottoman heritage, the new sultans of the new regime. Looking for the regional, this is point number 4. Looking to the regional, position, to the Middle East mainly, this transformation, I think, could be also formulated as these were, this time I'm not speaking about AKP, but about Turkey in general. Turkey was the ex-Westerner of the Middle East since, let's say, since 2000. Turkey is no more the Westerner of the Middle East, but it is the new Easterner of the European Union, of the West. So this is also a very interesting change, because we know from trade, we know from any kind of social relations that in these last 10-15 days, let's say, for instance, the role and the place of Arabic as a language became much more important in Turkey, in trade or in any other social relation. When you will have the list of the President of the Republic, of the Prime Minister, of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, their visit outside, well, before 2000, the majority of the visits were to the Westerner capitals, Paris, London, Brussels. And since 2000, 2002 mainly, now they are much more going to the Easterners, to the East capitals. So they do have much more relation with the Eastern world than the Westerner. They do have much more relation with the Islamic and Arabic world comparatively to the Occidental. Of course, from the beginning of the Turkish Republic, a kind of Semitic feelings, which is not only or exclusively all the feelings against Israel, but also against Arabs in Turkey. They do not like very much Arabs. There are so many legends saying that Arabs have been stabbing from behind during the First World War, so they have been collaborating with the imperialists against Kemalist revolution, so and so. All the Turkish diplomacy during 70 or even 80 years was a little bit, let's say, afraid, or was not very, didn't have any hot relations with the Islamic and Arabic world. That also have changed with the AKP. Image number 5, just few information about relationship, new relationship of Ankara with the neighbors, with Iran. During Shah Reza Pahlavi period, there was a very good relation between Ankara and Tehran, because both of them were very pro-American, so no problem. With Khomeini revolution, 79, all these relations were, they had so big problems, because the Turkish administration of that time was afraid from Islamic revolution, so they were not very happy, of course, about what's going on in Iran. But with the AKP government, they begin to have very good relation with Tehran. Even the relations were so good that Turkey, very probably for the first time since the beginning, voted against Washington during a vote in United Nations Security Council, because it was one of the, a member of the Security Council, with Brazil to, let's say, save the Iranian nuclear energy program. We saw Brazil, Turkey and Iran on the same side against US. Of course, that was a great failure after that. Relationship with Iraq is something also very interesting, because there is I will try to explain it later, but a constant Kurdophobia in the Turkish public imaginary, but also in the Turkish diplomacy. When they have to go and to have any kind of relationship with the neighbors, the first problem that they are looking is the Kurdish problem. So, is Ankara relation with Iraq, Iran, or Syria will give a new support to the Kurdish or not? Of course, in diplomacy, as you know, has a very close relationship with the domestic policy. I'll give you an example about that later. So, relationship with Iraq, which was not very bad during Saddam period, is now under the threat of the Kurdish problem, because there is a more or less independent Kurdish kind of a state in northern Iraq, which is officially called Iraqi Kurdistan Autonomous Administration, which Turkey do not like at all, because they are afraid that one day this could be the same in the Turkish territory. Relationship with Armenia is also very conflictual, because, as you know, with the famous debate about what's happened during 1915 genocide or deportation. As you know, Turkish official ideology is saying that no, there have been no genocide, that was only deportation, and the rest of the world is saying that it was a genocide. But with the new government, with the AKP government, they do have a very good, theoretically speaking, very good policy called zero problem with all neighbors. Because before it was, Turkey, before AKP, had a problem with the totality of their neighbors, of the neighbors. So zero problem is a very good, very attractive, very sexy policy. Unfortunately, we do have now a zero in our diplomacy, but this is zero solution, thanks to Ahmet Davutoğlu, a genius, really a genius Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The last commérages, the last thing that I heard, when he is calling his counterpart, Miss Hillary Clinton is saying, "I'm not at home." she's even not replying to him because it's a case. So there was a good step to solve the problem with the Republic of the Armenian Republic, but they were very easily influenced by Azerbaijan. The protocol between Yerevan and Ankara have to be signed. Again, Hillary Clinton was there, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, UK, and a very high responsible of EU was there. That was in Zurich, as I remember, 2 or 3 years ago. The protocol was signed, so it should be normally going, it has to be approved by the parliaments of both countries, Turkey and Armenia, but it was not, because Azerbaijan was not at all happy, of course, about that. And Turkey was not able to have a really independent diplomacy, despite the whole support coming from the Westerners, Western powers. Azerbaijan was able to block this relation. But of course, relation with Israel and US is also very important, and so many things have changed in this landscape. I should say that as a government coming from more or less radical Islam, they are not against Israel. They are not anti-Zionists. I'm afraid that they are much more anti-Semite than anti-Zionist. And they do not know how to deal with Israel. They have been not very, very professional during this Mavi Marmara case, where 9 Turkish people were killed by the Israeli security forces. And Israel was not able, Turkey was not able to, Israel didn't say any pardon or didn't pay any money for these people. So nobody is speaking now about that because it's a real failure. with US, relationship with US is also very problematic. From one side, the base of the AKP, I mean, militants of AKP, do not like at all US because they are against Islamic world in there. They are against Arabs, so and so. But about diplomacy and internal politics, they do have normally good relations, and between President Obama and Prime Minister Erdogan, it seems that they are understanding each other, and just 3 or 4 days ago, they met in Seoul. They were in general okay. That was written in the Turkish press, but I know how to translate the discourse of the Turkish press. It's been that Erdogan have to say okay to Obama. They were not okay at all. Mainly about Syrian problem. Last 3 problems, I already said the zero problem, zero solution. In the mind of the Turkish diplomacy, I think that this is a difference between, let's say, US and all European, include UK, sorry to say that. In diplomacy, there is, I think, 2 ways of dealing. For Americans, for US, for Washington, the problem is to remove the threat. Afghanistan, Iran, or any other problem, the way of approach is removing the threat. Or for Europeans, include Turkey and UK, I think that the problem is to solve the problem. These are 2 completely different approaches. Turkey, before AKP, was on the side of the Europeans, so were mainly trying to solve problems with, most of the time, with US or with European Union. But now, the approach of threat is dominant in the Turkish diplomacy. There is also claustrophobia in the Turkish public, official, imaginary. Everybody is trying to divide Turkey. Everybody is trying to break the power of Turkey. This is really something which is an heritage from the Ottoman Empire. I think that we should understand that when during at least 4 or 5 centuries you have been dominating in 3 continents, a big empire, and one day, for so many political, military, and ideological reasons, you have been downsized to a peninsula of Anatolia. You do not have a very normal way of understanding and way of thinking and way of acting. In Cumhuriyet, today's Cumhuriyet, very probably the only opposition newspaper of the ancien regime against AKP, Musa Kart, a cartoonist, made a very good cartoon that explains very good this relationship between diplomacy, or let's say foreign policy and domestic policy. It's hard to explain a cartoon, but I'll try it. This is, as I know, it's also in the British TV, Who Want to Be Millionaire, the game. And the genius Minister of Foreign Affairs is one of the, player. The question is that one. In which country Özgür Gündem newspaper was closed down? Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ahmet Davutoğlu, was thinking, and the man who is asking the question was helping to him. 76 of their journalists have been also killed. The minister is replying, this is my final decision, Syria. It is impossible to be progressive inside and conservative outside. It is possible to be conservative outside and conservative inside, which is the case of Turkey. My last point will be there have been so many change. I should say a quote from Ece Ayhan, a very famous poet. He was living in Çanakkale for, we lost him in 2002, I think. For 10 years he hadn't been in Istanbul. He was living in Çanakkale, and once he came to Istanbul, and I was speaking with him, and I asked to him, Ayhan abi, what was the big change that you see in Istanbul in these last 10 years? He said, oh, there have been big changes, very big changes, but no evolution. I think that this is the case for also AKP. Since that they are in power, they have changed the status quo for a new conservative one. The